Hello everyone, welcome to the What If Anime YouTube channel. Today, we are diving into an exciting new story that will take your imagination to the next level. Let's get started. What if Naruto masters Sage Mode from his mother's womb? Subscribe if you enjoy the video. The late afternoon sun painted Konoha's streets golden as Kushina Uzumaki sprinted across the rooftops, her long crimson hair streaming behind her like a battle flag. 3 kunai whistled through the air toward her back. Without breaking stride, she spun, her hands flashing through seals at lightning speed. Water style. Liquid barrier. A shimmering wall of water materialized, catching the kunai mid-flight. The weapons hung suspended for a heartbeat before dropping harmlessly to the tiles below. Kushina grinned, her violet eyes flashing with the thrill of combat. "You'll have to do better than that, you know," she called out, her Uzumaki catchphrase slipping out in the heat of the moment. Her ENBU pursuers, wearing the distinctive porcelain animal masks of Konoha's elite, increased their pace. This was no real battle, but the final phase of a training exercise that had gone on far too long. Captain Tiger signaled to his teammates, and they split formation to flank their target. Kushina felt a familiar rush of chakra surging through her body, the exhilaration of the chase making her feel more alive than she had in months. After weeks of routine missions and village duties, this high-intensity training was exactly what she needed. The wind whipped against her face as she leapt across a particularly wide gap between buildings, landing with the practiced grace of a seasoned kunoichi. That's when it happened. A wave of dizziness struck her mid-jump. Her vision blurred, the world tilting at an impossible angle. For the first time in years, Kushina misjudged her landing. Her foot slipped on the ceramic roof tiles, sending her tumbling. She managed to catch herself before rolling off the edge, but not before Captain Tiger materialized beside her, kunai at her throat. "Match point," he said, his voice muffled behind his mask. "Are you all right, Lady Kushina?" Kushina waved him off, trying to catch her breath as the other ANBU landed nearby. "I'm fine, just lost my footing for a second," but she wasn't fine. As she stood, another wave of nausea crashed over her. She pressed her hand against her stomach, a strange fluttering sensation rippling through her core. It wasn't painful, just foreign, as if something inside her had shifted ever so slightly. "Maybe we should call it a day," suggested the ANBU with the owl mask, her voice tinged with concern. "No," Kushina protested, straightening her back with determination. "We've got another hour before." Her words cut off as she felt a distinct pulse from within her seal, the complex matrix that kept the 9-tailed fox imprisoned within her body. It wasn't the usual sensation of the fox testing its boundaries. This was different, almost like the seal itself was responding to something. Captain Tiger noticed her expression change. "Lady Kushina?" She placed her hand over her abdomen, where the seal was centered. I need to see Lord Fourth." Minato Namikaze, the 4th Hokage of Konohagakure, was buried under a mountain of scrolls when his office door burst open without ceremony. Only one person in the entire village would enter that way, and a smile had already formed on his lips before he looked up. "Kushina, I thought you were training with..." The words died in his throat when he saw her face. "What's wrong?" Kushina closed the door behind her, leaning against it as if needing its support. Her usually vibrant face was pale, her breathing slightly labored. "Something weird is happening with the seal." Minato was at her side in an instant, paperwork forgotten. "Is the 9-tails?" "No, not like that," she said, shaking her head. "It's not trying to break free. It's more like the seal is responding to something else. Something inside me." Minato's brow furrowed as he guided her to a chair. "When did this start?" "Just now, during training. I got dizzy, then nauseous, then felt this strange flutter." She looked up at him, vulnerability flickering across her features. "Minato, I'm late." It took him a moment to process her meaning. "Late for what?" Kushina rolled her eyes, despite her concern. "My period, you genius." "I'm late by almost 3 weeks." Minato's eyes widened, his mind racing through calculations and possibilities. "You think you might be pregnant?" Kushina finished for him. "Maybe. But that's not what worries me. It's how the seal reacted. If there is a baby, the fox knows it too." Minato knelt before her, placing his hand gently over hers on her abdomen. As the most accomplished seal master in Konoha, his sensitivity to chakra was unparalleled. He closed his eyes, extending his awareness into the complex matrix he had helped reinforce years ago. What he felt made him gasp. There was indeed a new presence within Kushina. Tiny, barely formed, but unmistakably there. A new life, pulsing with potential. But surrounding this small spark was something extraordinary. A thin web of chakra unlike anything he had ever sensed. It wasn't Kushina's fiery Uzumaki energy, nor was it the malevolent power of the Nine Tails. This chakra was serene, balanced, almost pure in its quality. Kushina, he whispered, opening his eyes to meet hers. I think you are pregnant. Her face transformed, joy and fear battling for dominance. Really? You can tell already? He nodded, but his expression remained troubled. There's something else. The baby's chakra system. It's already forming, which shouldn't be happening this early. And it's drawing in chakra from around it. From the Nine Tails? Alarm sharpened her voice. No, Minato said, shaking his head slowly. Not from the fox, not from either. It feels like nature energy. Kushina's eyes widened. Like sage mode? That's impossible. Even Jiraiya-sensei needed years of training to master that. Minato stood up, his mind already formulating plans. We need to get you to the hospital. And then I need to send for Jiraiya-sensei immediately. The hospital room was quiet save for the steady beep of monitoring equipment. Biwako Sarutobi, wife of the third Hokage and Konoha's most respected midwife, studied the readings with a furrowed brow. Well, you're definitely pregnant, Kushina. About 6 weeks along, I'd say. Kushina lay on the examination table, her shirt raised to expose her abdomen where several chakra-sensitive sensors had been attached. The seal that contained the Nine Tails was visible, an intricate spiral pattern that expanded across her skin. Is everything normal? Minato asked from his position at Kushina's side, his hand never leaving hers. Biwako's eyes softened slightly at the young Hokage's concern. The fetus appears healthy. Strong heartbeat, good chakra circulation. She paused, choosing her words carefully. But there are anomalies in the chakra readings that I can't explain. I've delivered hundreds of babies, including those from prominent clans with Kekkei Genkai, and I've never seen patterns like these. Kushina exchanged a worried glance with Minato. What does that mean for the baby? I don't know, Biwako admitted. But given your unique situation as the Nine Tails Jinchuriki, we need to proceed with caution. I'm recommending complete surveillance of your pregnancy, with weekly checkups. Minato nodded grimly. And absolute secrecy. If word gets out about Kushina's pregnancy, our enemies might see it as an opportunity to strike when the seal is at its weakest. During childbirth, Kushina whispered, her hand instinctively moving to protect her barely formed child. A knock at the door interrupted them. Captain Tiger appeared, his mask firmly in place despite being in the hospital. Lord Fourth, Jiraiya-sama has arrived in the village. He says it's urgent. The Hokage's private study was one of the few truly secure locations in Konoha, protected by layers of seals and barriers that Minato himself had designed. It was here that he met with his former teacher, away from prying eyes and ears. Jiraiya of the Sannin looked exactly as he always did, tall and imposing, with wild white hair and red markings down his face. But the usual mischievous glint in his eyes was absent, replaced by a seriousness that put Minato on edge immediately. You got here faster than I expected, Minato said, pouring sake for both of them. My messenger toad couldn't have reached you more than an hour ago. Jiraiya accepted the drink but didn't sip it. I was already on my way to Konoha before your summons arrived. The great toad sage had a vision 3 days ago that sent me running back here. A chill ran down Minato's spine. The ancient sage of Mount Mayaboku rarely offered prophecies, but when he did, they invariably heralded world-changing events. What kind of vision? Jiraiya's eyes darkened. He spoke of a child born one with nature, who would either bring balance to the world of shinobi or usher in its destruction. A child connected to both the beasts of chakra and the very essence of the natural world. Minato sank into his chair, the sake forgotten. Kushina's pregnant. Jiraiya showed no surprise. I figured as much when your message mentioned unusual chakra patterns. How far along? 6 weeks. But there's already something unusual happening with the baby's chakra network. It's somehow drawing in natural energy, like a sage, but unconsciously. Jiraiya leaned forward, his expression grave. Minato, what you're describing shouldn't be possible. It takes decades of training to even sense natural energy, let alone channel it. And those who try without proper preparation turn to stone. I know, Minato said, running a hand through his spiky blonde hair. But I felt it myself. The baby's chakra has qualities similar to sage mode, but purer somehow. And the seal is reacting to it, though not negatively from what I can tell. Jiraiya was silent for a long moment, weighing his next words carefully. The Nine Tails is a being of pure chakra, with a connection to natural energy that even I don't fully understand. If your child is developing in proximity to such power, you think the fox is influencing the baby's development? Or perhaps it's the other way around, Jiraiya mused. The great toad sage specifically mentioned harmony between the tailed beasts and nature itself. This could be the beginning of something we've never seen before. Minato stood up abruptly, pacing the small room. Prophecy or not, this is my child we're talking about. And Kushina, the strain on her body, the risk during childbirth. Jiraiya finally took a sip of his sake, grimacing at the taste or perhaps at the weight of what he had to say next. I need to examine Kushina's seal as soon as possible. And then, with your permission, I'd like to bring the elder toads to Konoha. Minato stopped pacing. You think it's that serious? I think, Jiraiya said carefully, that we're witnessing the first steps of a prophecy that could change everything. And we need to be prepared. Hiruzen Sarutobi had seen too much in his long life to be easily surprised. But the news that Minato shared with him in the secure chamber beneath the Hokage Tower left even the god of shinobi momentarily speechless. A Jinchuriki with child is concerning enough, the third Hokage said, puffing thoughtfully on his pipe. But one whose unborn baby is already channeling sage chakra. This is unprecedented. They sat around a circular table, Minato, Hiruzen, Jiraiya, Biwako, and Kushina herself. The chamber was illuminated by softly glowing seals that lined the walls, creating an atmosphere of otherworldly calm that belied the tension in the air. We need to establish a protocol, Hiruzen continued. A security detail for Kushina, regular medical examinations, and absolute secrecy. Kushina, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. Don't I get a say in any of this? It's my body, my baby. All eyes turned to her. In the dim light, her red hair seemed to glow with an inner fire, a physical manifestation of the determination in her eyes. Of course you do, Minato said gently. Then let me be clear, she said, straightening in her chair. I will not be treated like some fragile experiment. Yes, I'll take precautions, but I won't be locked away for 9 months. I'm still a kunoichi of the hidden leaf. Jiraiya chuckled, breaking some of the tension. As spirited as ever, Kushina. No one's suggesting locking you up. But you have to admit, this situation requires extraordinary measures. What does the fox say about all this? Hiruzen asked, his sharp eyes fixed on Kushina. She placed a hand over her seal, her expression turning inward for a moment. It's been quiet. Almost too quiet. Usually, I can feel its hatred and rage pushing against the seal. But since I became pregnant, it's been watchful. Like it's waiting for something. Jiraiya exchanged a meaningful glance with Minato. The prophecy mentioned harmony with the tailed beasts. Perhaps the Nine Tails senses what's happening. Or it's biding its time, Hiruzen countered. We cannot forget what the fox is capable of if it breaks free. Biwako, who had been silently taking notes, finally joined the conversation. From a medical perspective, we're in uncharted territory. A Jinchuriki pregnancy is rare enough, but with these additional complications. She looked directly at Kushina. The strain on your body will be immense. The seal weakens during childbirth. We all know this. But with your child already showing these unusual chakra patterns, we can't predict how the seal might behave throughout the pregnancy. Which is why I've proposed bringing the elder toads, Jiraiya added. They understand natural energy better than anyone. If the child is truly channeling sage chakra, they might be able to explain how. And more importantly, how to ensure it doesn't harm either Kushina or the baby. Minato, who had been listening intently, finally spoke. I've been working on modifications to the seal. Subtle adjustments that might help accommodate the changes we're seeing. But I'll need time to perfect them. And resources, Hiruzen added. The Uzumaki clan had the most extensive knowledge of sealing techniques. We should dispatch a team to the ruins of Yuzushiogakure to retrieve any scrolls that might have survived its destruction. Kushina's eyes widened. You'd do that? Hiruzen smiled gently at her. Your clan's legacy might hold the key to protecting both you and your child. It's worth the risk. There's one more thing we need to consider, Jiraiya said, his expression solemn. If the great Toad Sage's prophecy is true, this child could be a target for those who wish to control such power. Enemies both within and outside the village. A heavy silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. Danzo, Hiruzen murmured, naming his old friend and rival whose methods had grown increasingly questionable over the years. Among others, Jiraiya agreed. The other hidden villages would kill for a chance to study, or possess, a child with such abilities. Minato's eyes hardened, a cold determination replacing his usual gentle demeanor. They'll have to go through me first. Kushina reached for his hand under the table, squeezing it tightly. Through us. Hiruzen tapped his pipe thoughtfully. We need to form a special council to monitor this situation. The 5 of us, plus perhaps Kakashi as A&B representative, and Shikaka Nara for his strategic mind. No one else, Minato insisted. The fewer who know, the better. Agreed, Hiruzen said with a nod. Now let's discuss the practical aspects of Kushina's security. Weeks passed, turning into months. Autumn leaves gave way to winter snow, and still, Kushina's pregnancy remained a closely guarded secret. To the outside world, the red-hot habanero had simply been assigned to less strenuous duties due to an old injury flaring up. A cover story that few dared question, given her legendary temper. On a cold December night, Kushina sat alone in the spacious living room of the home she shared with Minato. Outside, snow fell in lazy spirals, blanketing Konoha in pristine white. Inside, a fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across the walls. She was 4 months pregnant now, her belly just beginning to show the first curves of motherhood. In her hands, she held a small knitted baby booty, her 3rd attempt of the evening, and still hopelessly lopsided. I can master a ranked jutsu, but I can't knit a simple booty, she muttered to herself, tossing it aside in frustration. A soft chuckle from the doorway made her look up. Minato stood there, snow melting in his blonde hair, his Hokage cloak draped over one arm. Don't laugh at me. She pouted, though there was no real anger in her voice. I wouldn't dare, he said, crossing the room to sit beside her on the couch. He picked up the discarded booty, examining it with a smile. I think it has character. Kushina leaned into him, drawing comfort from his warmth. How was the meeting? Productive. Shikaka's team returned from Yuzushiogakure with several intact scrolls. Some of them mentioned pregnancies among Uzumaki women with special chakra conditions. Nothing exactly like ours, but it's a start. And Jiraiya-sensei? Still at Mount Mayaboku with the elder toads. He sent a message saying they're intrigued by what I told them about our baby's chakra signature. Kushina sighed, rubbing her belly absently. Everyone's so interested in our baby's chakra. Sometimes I forget that we're just having a baby. A little boy or girl who'll need more than just seals and prophecies. Minato's expression softened as he placed his hand over hers. Have you felt any more of those chakra fluctuations? A few times a day now, she admitted. They're getting stronger. And the fox, it's definitely aware. I can feel it watching, almost curious. Curious? Minato raised an eyebrow. That's not a word I'd usually associate with the Nine Tails. I know. It's strange. There's still hatred there, but it's as if something about the baby has caught its attention in a different way. She shifted uncomfortably. The seal feels different too. Not weaker exactly, but more permeable. As if the baby's chakra is creating small channels through it. Alarm flashed across Minato's face. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because you worry too much already, she said, touching his cheek gently. And because I don't think it's dangerous. It feels natural somehow. Like this is supposed to happen. Before Minato could respond, a sharp knock at the door interrupted them. Instantly alert, he motioned for Kushina to stay seated while he answered it. Captain Tiger stood on the threshold, snow swirling around his masked figure. Lord Fourth, Lady Kushina. Jiraiya-sama has returned with guests. The third Hokage requests your presence immediately. The secure chamber beneath the Hokage Tower had been modified since their last meeting. The center of the room now featured a large, cushioned examination table, surrounded by seals that glowed with a soft blue light. Various monitoring equipment had been brought in, along with scrolls, books, and what appeared to be ancient stone tablets covered in unfamiliar script. But what drew everyone's attention were the two diminutive figures sitting on cushions near the head of the table. Fukasaku and Shima, the elder toads of Mount Myaboka. Ah, there they are, croaked Fukasaku, his weathered green skin crinkling as he smiled. The parents-to-be. Kushina bowed respectfully to the ancient sages, a gesture they returned with equal formality. Thank you for coming all this way, she said. Humph. As if we had a choice after what Jiraiya boy told us, Shima replied, her tone gruff but not unkind. A human child channeling nature energy from the womb? In all our centuries, we've never heard of such a thing. Jiraiya, who had been conversing quietly with Hiruzen in the corner, stepped forward. Kushina, we'd like to examine you, or more specifically, your baby's chakra network. With your permission, of course. Kushina glanced at Minato, who nodded encouragingly. All right. As she settled onto the examination table, the others took positions around the room. Biwako stood ready with medical equipment, while Hiruzen activated additional security seals on the doors and windows. Minato remained at Kushina's side, his expression a careful mask of calm that didn't quite reach his eyes. This won't hurt a bit, Fukasaku assured her, hopping onto a stool beside the table. We're simply going to extend our senses and observe the natural energy flow. You might feel a slight tingling sensation. Both elder toads closed their eyes, the skin around them darkening as they entered sage mode. Their gnarled hands hovered over Kushina's abdomen, not quite touching but clearly sensing something beyond normal perception. The room fell silent save for the soft hum of the monitoring equipment. Minutes stretched on, the tension growing with each passing moment. Sweat beaded on Fukasaku's brow, while Shima's expression shifted from concentration to astonishment. Finally, they opened their eyes, exchanging a look of profound shock. Well? Jiraiya prompted, unable to contain his impatience. What did you sense? Fukasaku cleared his throat. In all my years, I never thought. He shook his head, seemingly at a loss for words. Speak plainly, old geezer. Shima scolded her husband. They deserve to know. She turned to face the anxious parents. Your child is not just channeling natural energy. It's living in perfect harmony with it. The balance of physical energy, spiritual energy, and natural energy that we toads spend decades mastering. Your unborn baby has achieved it instinctively. Gasps echoed around the room. That's impossible, Jiraiya said. Even the most gifted sages need years of training to maintain that balance. Without it, the natural energy overwhelms the body, turning the user to stone. Nevertheless, Fukasaku insisted, what we sensed is unmistakable. This child exists in a state of perfect sage harmony. And more incredibly, it appears to be using this harmony to communicate. Communicate? Kushina repeated, her hand protectively covering her belly. With who? The elder toads exchanged another meaningful glance before Shima answered. With the nine-tailed fox. The room erupted in exclamations of shock and disbelief. Minato gripped Kushina's hand so tightly it almost hurt. That's not possible, Hiruzen said, stepping forward. The seal is designed to keep the fox contained and separate from Kushina's own chakra network. And yet, Fukasaku said solemnly, we sensed a distinct connection, a thread of sage chakra extending from the child to the nine-tails consciousness. Not merging with it, not drawing power from it, but acknowledging it. Almost like a greeting, Kushina felt a chill run down her spine. Is that why the fox has been so quiet lately? Because it's been talking to my baby? Talking might be too strong a word, Shima clarified. It's more like an awareness. The fox is a being of immense chakra, with deep connections to the natural world that even we don't fully understand. Your child's sage chakra resonates with that aspect of the nine tails. Minato's scientific mind struggled to process this information. But how is this possible? How can an unborn child, not even fully formed, channel sage chakra at all, let alone achieve the perfect balance that even Jiraiya-sensei struggles with? Fukasaku stroked his beard thoughtfully. We believe it has to do with the unique circumstances of this pregnancy. A child conceived and growing within a Jinchuriki's body, surrounded by the chakra of both a powerful Uzumaki and a tailed beast. It's unprecedented. But there have been other Jinchuriki who've had children, Biwako pointed out. None of them exhibited these traits. None of them were carrying the 9 tails, Jiraiya mused. Of all the tailed beasts, it has the most complex chakra signature, and possibly the strongest connection to natural energy. There's something else, Shima added hesitantly. Something we sensed about the child's chakra pathways. They're developing differently than normal. Differently how? Kushina asked, fear creeping into her voice. They appear to be adapting specifically to channel and balance natural energy. Fukasaku explained. A normal human's chakra system isn't designed to handle sage chakra without extensive training and modification. But your child's pathways are forming with this capacity already built in. The implications hung heavy in the air. A child born with the innate ability to use sage mode would be unprecedented. A potential power unlike anything the shinobi world had seen before. The prophecy, Jiraiya murmured, almost to himself. A child born one with nature. This is what the great toad sage foresaw. Hiruzen's weathered face grew grave. Such power will make the child a target from the moment its abilities become known. Then we ensure they don't become known, Minato said firmly. At least not until our child is old enough to protect themselves. Kushina remained silent, processing everything she had heard. Her child, her unborn baby, was already so special, so unprecedented that ancient sages and legendary shinobi were gathered to discuss its significance. Pride warred with fear in her heart, maternal instinct clashing with her duty as a Jinchuriki. And then she felt it. A surge of chakra, stronger than any before, rippled through her seal. But this time, it wasn't just the baby's sage chakra she sensed. For the first time in months, she felt the 9 tails stir within her, not with its usual malevolence, but with something that felt almost like acknowledgement. Kushina gasped, her hands flying to her abdomen as the monitoring equipment began to beat frantically. Kushina! Minato cried, alarmed by her sudden reaction. The elder toads immediately reactivated their sage mode, their expressions shifting to amazement. Remarkable, breathed Fukasaku. The fox is responding to the child's sage chakra. Is she in danger? Minato demanded, ready to apply emergency sealing techniques if necessary. No, Shima assured him, though her tone held wonder rather than certainty. The 9 tails isn't attacking or trying to break free. It's reaching out, through the sage chakra connection. Kushina closed her eyes, focusing inward on the sensation. Within the dark landscape of her seal, she could feel the 9 tails stirring behind its massive gates. Its enormous eyes were open, glowing with an ancient intelligence that had always been obscured by hatred before. And stretching between them was a thin, golden thread of pure chakra. Sage chakra, originating from the tiny life growing within her. A life that was, impossibly, making first contact with one of the most fearsome entities in existence. The red thread of destiny, she whispered, opening her eyes to meet Minato's worried gaze. In Uzushio, we had a legend that fated souls are connected by an invisible red thread. I can feel it, Minato. A connection between our baby and the 9 tails. The monitoring equipment continued to register the unusual chakra fluctuations, creating a visual record of what was occurring. Patterns that had never been seen before danced across the screens, beautiful in their complexity. This changes everything, Hiruzen said quietly. If the child can indeed communicate with the 9 tails through sage chakra, it could lead to a completely new understanding of the tailed beasts. Jiraiya finished, his expression torn between academic fascination and genuine concern for his former student's family. Minato's mind was already racing ahead, considering implications, planning contingencies. We need to strengthen the security around Kushina immediately, and accelerate my research into adapting the seal for these new circumstances. Biwako stepped forward, her medical training asserting itself amid the metaphysical discussions. Right now, what Kushina needs is rest. This level of chakra activity can't be good for either her or the baby. As if in response to her words, the chakra surge began to subside. The golden thread Kushina had since thinned and faded, though she could still feel a lingering connection, delicate but undeniable. She's right, Kushina said, suddenly feeling exhausted. I need to go home. We'll continue this discussion tomorrow, Hiruzen decided. Minato, take Kushina home and ensure she gets proper rest. Jiraiya, I want you and the Elder Toads to document everything you observed today. As the meeting broke up, Minato helped Kushina to her feet, supporting her with a gentle arm around her waist. The others filed out, their hushed conversations fading as they ascended from the underground chamber. In the quiet that followed their departure, Minato pressed his forehead against Kushina's, his blue eyes meeting her violet ones. Are you really okay? He asked softly. She managed a tired smile. I think so. It was intense, but not painful. Almost beautiful, in a strange way. And the 9 tails? Kushina placed her hand over her seal, her expression thoughtful. It's quiet again now, but different than before. Less hostile, as if our baby did something even I've never been able to do. Reached the fox on some fundamental level. Minato placed his hand over hers, and together they felt the gentle pulse of their child's developing chakra network. A miracle made even more extraordinary by today's revelations. Whatever comes, he promised, we'll face it together. All 3 of us. As they left the chamber, either noticed the faint orange glow that briefly emanated from Kushina's seal. The color not of the 9 tails malevolent chakra, but of the perfect sage chakra that their unborn child had somehow mastered from within the womb. The red thread of destiny had been woven, connecting lives in ways that would reshape the very foundations of the shinobi world. Darkness. Endless, encompassing darkness. But it wasn't empty. It pulsed with life, with warmth, with the steady, rhythmic beating that surrounded him. He had no name for it yet, no name for anything, but he felt it all. Thump thump. Thump thump. The sound was his first companion, his constant. It ebbed and flowed, sometimes quickening when the warm presence that enclosed him moved suddenly, sometimes slowing to a gentle lullaby when that presence was at rest. He had no body as humans understood it, not yet. But he had awareness, a consciousness forming far earlier than nature intended. And he had chakra, wild and untamed, flowing through pathways that were still being written into existence. The boy who would be Naruto Uzumaki floated in his mother's womb, already 5 months along, cradled in amniotic fluid and something else, something ancient and powerful. His developing chakra network glowed with a soft blue light, visible only to those with the rarest of sensory abilities. But what made this network extraordinary wasn't just its premature development. It was the golden threads woven through it, channels specifically formed to carry and balance natural energy. Sage chakra. A power that the greatest of shinobi spent decades trying to master, manifesting spontaneously in an unborn child. As Kushina Uzumaki slept peacefully in her bed, her hand resting protectively over her growing belly, her unborn son reached out, not with hands, but with awareness. His developing consciousness, accelerated by the unique chakra environment within his mother, extended tendrils of perception through Kushina's own chakra network. And for the first time, he truly saw. The mindscape was vast and cavernous, pipes running along stone walls that dripped with moisture. Water covered the floor, ankle-deep and cold. The air hung heavy with malevolence and ancient power. The unborn Naruto had no physical form here, existing only as a small orb of pulsing blue-gold light, hovering uncertainly in this strange new realm. His consciousness was rudimentary, operating on instinct rather than thought. But even so, he was drawn forward by an irresistible pull. Ahead, massive iron bars rose from the water to the unseen ceiling, forming a cage so vast its edges were lost in shadow. A paper seal held the gates closed, the single kanji for seal standing stark against the white. Behind those bars, something enormous stirred. 2 eyes opened in the darkness, massive, crimson, with slitted pupils that contracted at the sight of the floating orb of light. The eyes rose higher as their owner stood to its full, terrifying height. The 9-tailed fox, the Kyubi no Kitsune, stared down at the tiny presence that had somehow entered its prison. What is this? The fox's voice rumbled through the mindscape like thunder, disturbing the water's surface into rippling waves. What are you, little light? The orb of chakra pulsed but did not retreat. It had no words, no language to respond with. Instead, it drifted closer to the bars, innocent curiosity overriding what should have been primal fear. The 9-tail's massive teeth gleamed as its lips pulled back in a snarl. You dare approach me? who have toppled mountains and raised tsunamis with a single swipe of my tails. A massive paw crashed against the bars, claws extended, seeking to shred the impudent light. But the cage held firm, as it had for over a decade of Kushina's imprisonment of the beast. The orb bobbed and weaved, not in fear but in something akin to playfulness. It pulsed brighter, the golden threads of sage chakra becoming more prominent. The nine tails froze, its enormous eyes widening slightly. That chakra, impossible. It lowered its massive head, bringing one enormous eye level with the floating orb. You're the one growing inside my jailer, the fox realized, its voice dropping to a dangerous rumble. Her offspring. Not even born, and yet somehow here, in this place between minds. A dark chuckle echoed through the chamber. How interesting. How useful. The orb of light, the essence of Naruto, pulsed again, and this time a tendril of golden chakra extended from it, reaching toward the bars. Not threatening, not attacking, but connecting. The nine tails reared back as if burned. What are you doing? This chakra, sage chakra? From an unborn infant, Naruto's essence drifted even closer to the bars, the tendril of golden chakra stretching further. Stay back. The fox snarled, genuine alarm in its voice. Your chakra, it's not like the others. Not like your mother's chains or that accursed Uchiha's visual prowess. This is older, more primal, but the light didn't retreat. The tendril of golden sage chakra slipped between the bars, moving toward the nine tails with inexorable purpose. I said stay back. The fox roared, backing away into the shadows of its cage. For the first time in centuries, the mightiest of the tailed beasts felt something akin to fear. The tendril of chakra paused, hovering in the space between them. Then, slowly, it began to take shape, forming a tiny, glowing hand, barely formed but unmistakably human. A hand reaching out, not to capture or control, but in greeting. The nine tails stared at this impossible offering, conflict raging in its ancient eyes. Hatred and suspicion warred with curiosity and, buried so deep it was almost unrecognizable, a longing for connection that the beast had suppressed since the days of the Sage of Six Paths. After what seemed an eternity, the fox snorted and turned away. Meaningless. You're nothing but a half-formed collection of cells, carried within my prison. Your awareness here is a fluke, a momentary anomaly that means nothing. The golden hand remained extended, unwavering. Leave me, the nine tails growled, curling up in the far corner of its cage, nine magnificent tails wrapping around its massive form. Return to your development. I have no interest in the offspring of my jailers. But even as it spoke these dismissive words, one of its tails twitched, its tip glowing with a faint orange chakra that resonated with the same frequency as the golden sage energy emanating from Naruto's essence. A connection, however tenuous, had been made. Minato Namikaze's eyes snapped open in the pre-dawn darkness, instantly alert. Years as a shinobi, and more recently, months of anxious anticipation as a father-to-be, had honed his senses to detect the slightest change in his environment. Something had awakened him. Beside him, Kushina slept peacefully, her red hair spread across the pillow like a pool of crimson silk. Her hands were clasped protectively over her swollen belly, her lips curved in a slight smile. Whatever had disturbed Minato hadn't affected her rest. He sat up slowly, extending his senses through the apartment. No intruders, no disturbances in the security seals he had meticulously placed around their home. And yet, there. A pulse of chakra so subtle that anyone else would have missed it. Not from outside, but from within, from Kushina's seal. Moving with the silent grace that had earned him the moniker Yellow Flash, Minato slipped from the bed and knelt beside his sleeping wife. He placed his hand gently over hers, channeling a whisper of his own chakra to sense what was happening. His eyes widened. The baby's chakra network was active, extraordinarily active for a fetus still months from birth. Pulses of energy flowed through the developing pathways in complex patterns that resembled advanced chakra control exercises. And more concerning, tendrils of this chakra were extending beyond the baby's forming body, tracing through Kushina's own network toward the seal that contained the nine tails. This can't be happening, Minato whispered, shock momentarily overriding his usual composure. He focused deeper, his extraordinary sensory abilities allowing him to follow the chakra's path. What he discovered left him breathless with both awe and alarm. The baby, His son, they had recently learned, was somehow synchronizing his chakra with the nine tails. Not merging with it, not drawing from it, but harmonizing, like two instruments finding the same resonance. And the fox was responding, its enormous chakra shifting in subtle ways that Minato had never observed before. "Minato?" Kushina's sleepy voice pulled him from his trance. "What's wrong?" Her violet eyes blinked open, immediately sharpening with concern as she registered his expression. "The baby," he said softly, his hand still on her belly. "His chakra is interacting with the nine tails." Kushina was fully awake now, pushing herself up on her elbows. "Is the seal weakening? Is he in danger?" "No, not exactly," Minato said, struggling to put what he'd sensed into words. "It's more like they're communicating." "Communicating?" Kushina repeated incredulously. "He's not even born yet. How could he possibly?" She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes widening as she felt it too, a distinct flutter of chakra, not the normal movements of a developing baby, but something more purposeful. Something directed. "That's not normal," she whispered, a tremor in her voice. Minato sat beside her on the bed, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Nothing about this pregnancy has been normal, Kushina." She leaned into him, seeking comfort in his steady presence. "Should we be worried? Is the fox trying to influence him somehow?" Minato considered this carefully. "I don't think so. If anything, our son seems to be the one initiating the connection. And the nine tails." He paused, searching for the right words. "It's responding, but not aggressively. Almost curiously." Kushina's hand tightened over her belly, her protective instinct flaring. "I don't like this, Minato. The fox is pure malevolence. Whatever interest it has in our son can't be benign." "Perhaps," Minato conceded. "But remember what the elder toad said. Our son's sage chakra resonates with an aspect of the nine tails that we don't fully understand. The tailed beasts were part of the natural world long before they became weapons in human conflicts." A sudden thought struck him, his blue eyes brightening with realization. The ancient scrolls, the ones recovered from Yuzishio-Bakure, there was something in them about the original nature of the tailed beasts, before they were divided from the 10 tails. He sprang from the bed, energized by this new possibility. "I need to review them again. There might be answers there that help us understand what's happening." Kushina watched him with a mixture of fondness and exasperation. At 4 in the morning, Minato paused, a sheepish smile crossing his face. "You're right. It can wait until dawn." He settled back beside her, one hand resting protectively over their unborn son. "For now, let's try to get some rest." But sleep eluded them both, their minds racing with the implications of what they'd discovered, and what it might mean for their child's future. Dawn painted Konoha in hues of gold and amber as Jiraiya made his way through the village streets. Despite the early hour, the marketplace was already coming alive, vendors setting up stalls while Shinobi reported for daily assignments. The Sannin moved with purpose, his usual boisterous demeanor subdued by the weight of his thoughts. The message from Minato had been urgent but cryptic. "Come immediately." New developments with the baby. As he approached the Hokage residence, Jiraiya noted the ANBU guards positioned discreetly around the perimeter. More than usual, and all elites. Whatever was happening, Minato was taking no chances with security. Captain Tiger materialized from the shadows as Jiraiya reached the entrance. "Lord Jiraiya, the Hokage is expecting you." The ANBU performed a series of hand signs, temporarily disabling the security seals to allow Jiraiya entry. The door swung open to reveal Minato hunched over a large table covered with ancient scrolls, his blonde hair disheveled from running his hands through it repeatedly. A sure sign he was deeply troubled. "You look like hell," Jiraiya announced by way of greeting. Minato looked up, dark circles under his normally bright eyes. "I've been up since 4. Something's happening with the baby, with his chakra." Jiraiya's expression grew serious as he approached the table. "Tell me," as Minato explained what he had sensed, the baby's consciousness somehow extending through Kushina's chakra network to interact with the nine tails. Jiraiya's frown deepened. "That shouldn't be possible," the Sannin muttered, stroking his chin. "Even with advanced development, a fetus shouldn't have the chakra control necessary for that kind of directed interaction." And yet it's happening, Minato said, gesturing to the scrolls spread before him. I've been going through the Uzumaki records, looking for precedents or explanations. Most focus on sealing techniques, but there are references to the true nature of the tailed beasts that might be relevant. Jiraiya leaned over the ancient parchment, his eyes narrowing as he translated the archaic script. Interesting. This passage suggests the tailed beasts weren't originally malevolent, that their hatred toward humans developed after centuries of being hunted, imprisoned, and used as weapons, which aligns with what the Elder Toads told us about the Nine Tails having a connection to natural energy that we don't understand, Minato added. What if our son's sage chakra is somehow resonating with that original nature? An intriguing theory. Came a new voice from the doorway. Both men turned to see Hiruzen Sarutobi entering, pipe in hand. The third Hokage looked every bit his age this morning, the weight of decades of service etched into the lines of his face. Forgive the intrusion, Hiruzen said, inclining his head slightly to Minato. Your you mentioned urgent developments. You're always welcome, Lord Third, Minato assured him, gesturing for his predecessor to join them. We could use your insight. As Hiruzen approached, the door to the adjacent room opened, and Kushina emerged. Despite her advanced pregnancy, she moved with the grace of a kunoichi, though her eyes betrayed her exhaustion. The gang's all here. I see, she remarked, managing a tired smile. Any brilliant insights yet? Jiraiya pulled out a chair for her. Just wild theories and ancient texts. The usual when dealing with unprecedented shinobi phenomena. Kushina settled into the chair with a grateful nod. Well, while you three have been poring over scrolls, I've been having a chat with our resident demon fox. That got their attention. 3 pairs of eyes fixed on her with varying degrees of alarm. You entered the sealed space? Minato asked, concern evident in his voice. Kushina, that's dangerous in your condition. She waved off his worry. I'm still the Jinchuriki here, remember? I needed to see for myself what was happening. Her expression grew thoughtful. And it was not what I expected. What did you find? Hiruzen asked, leaning forward with interest. Kushina placed her hands over her swollen belly, her eyes distant as she recalled the experience. The Nine Tails was different. Still full of hatred and rage, but also confused. Disturbed even. It demanded to know what I was doing to it. What you were doing? Jiraiya repeated, puzzled. That's just it, Kushina said, meeting his gaze. The fox thinks I'm somehow responsible for what's happening, for the sage chakra that's reaching into its consciousness. It doesn't understand that it's coming from the baby. Minato exchanged a significant look with Jiraiya. Or it doesn't want to admit that an unborn child is affecting it. Pride has always been the Nine Tails' weakness, Hiruzen mused, puffing thoughtfully on his pipe. The idea that a mere human infant could influence it would be galling. But influence it how? Jiraiya pressed. And to what end? That's what concerns me. Kushina's expression softened as she looked down at her belly. I don't think there is an end in mind. This isn't calculation or strategy. It's instinct. Pure unconscious connection, which makes it both more remarkable and more unpredictable, Minato said. Our son isn't deliberately trying to control or contain the Nine Tails. He's simply reaching out. Connecting. Like recognizes like, Hiruzen murmured. The natural energy in his sage chakra resonating with whatever fragment of natural energy remains in the Nine Tails composition. A heavy silence fell as they each considered the implications. Finally, Jiraiya straightened, his decision made. I need to bring the Elder Toads back immediately, he declared. If anyone can understand the nature of this connection, it's them. And if there's any risk to either Kushina or the baby, we need to know now. Minato nodded his agreement. In the meantime, I'll continue studying these scrolls. There's something here about the original chakra of the Sage of Six Paths that might be relevant. And I, Hiruzen said, rising from his seat, will discreetly inquire among the Senju clan elders. Lady Tsunade's grandmother was both an Uzumaki and the first Nine Tails Jinchuriki. There may be records or oral histories that could shed light on this situation. As the men discussed their next steps, Kushina remained quiet, her hands cradling her belly where her son floated in his watery world, already defying everything they thought they knew about chakra, consciousness, and the nature of the tailed beasts. In the darkness of the womb, Naruto's consciousness expanded. He had no concept of time, no understanding of the frantic research and worried discussions happening in the world outside. There was only sensation, awareness, and the growing connection to the chakra networks that surrounded him. His mother's life force flowed around him in warm, vibrant currents, strong, protective, and tinged with a fierceness that would one day be reflected in his own personality. He basked in it, drawing comfort from its constant presence. But there was another chakra that called to him, dark and ancient, filled with complexities his nascent mind couldn't yet comprehend. What he sensed wasn't the hatred or malevolence that adults perceived in the Nine Tails, but something deeper, more fundamental, a primal connection to nature itself, buried beneath centuries of rage and resentment. And so, again and again, he reached for it through the golden threads of sage chakra that formed naturally within his developing network. The Nine Tails paced its cage restlessly, massive claws splashing through the ankle-deep water with each step. Its 9 tails lashed behind it, agitated. "Come out, little light," it growled into the shadows beyond the bars. "I know you're there. I can sense your irritating presence. For days now, or what felt like days in this timeless mindscape, the fox had been aware of the unborn child's consciousness hovering at the edges of its prison, not always visible, but always there, observing, connecting, trying to, what? What could an unformed human possibly want from the mightiest of the tailed beasts? As if in response to its thoughts, the orb of blue-gold light materialized before the cage, pulsing gently. The Nine Tails bared its massive teeth. "Persistent little parasite, aren't you? Don't you have developing to do? Organs to form? Limbs to grow?" The orb bobbed in what almost seemed like amusement, then drifted closer to the bars. "Stay back," the fox warned, though its tone lacked the venom of their first encounter. "Your intrusions are disruptive." The truth was more complex. The child sage chakra, when it connected with the Nine Tails' own energy, stirred memories the fox had long suppressed. Memories of a time before hatred, before imprisonment, when the nine-tailed beasts were newly separated from the 10 tails by the Sage of Six Paths, still discovering their individual identities. The orb pulsed again, and this time the tendrils of golden chakra that extended from it were more substantial, more defined. They formed not just a hand, but the ghostly outline of an infant's body, translucent and shimmering, but unmistakably human. The Nine Tails' eyes narrowed. "Developing faster than normal, aren't you? Already forming a self-image." "How inconvenient." The spectral infant made no response, but the sage chakra surrounding it intensified, reaching through the bars toward the fox. "Enough of this," the Nine Tails snarled, backing away. "What do you want from me? I have nothing to offer you. No wisdom, no kindness, no." The golden chakra touched one of its tails, and the fox froze. The connection was like nothing it had experienced in centuries. Not the crushing chains of Uzumaki's sealing techniques, or the controlling gaze of the Sharingan, but something gentler. A recognition, an acknowledgement of the natural energy that formed the core of its being, beneath the layers of hatred and rage that had accumulated over centuries of mistreatment. For a moment, just a moment, the Nine Tails chakra responded, its orange energy harmonizing with the golden sage chakra in a display that would have astonished any witness. Then, with a violent shake of its massive head, the fox broke the connection. "Dangerous," it muttered, retreating to the far reaches of its cage. "Too dangerous. This resonance. You don't know what you're doing, little light." But a seed of realization had been planted in the ancient beast's mind. This unborn child, with his instinctive command of sage chakra, represented something the Nine Tails had not encountered in its long existence. A human who could potentially connect with it on a fundamental level, bypassing the control and dominance that had characterized all its previous interactions with humans. This could be either a tremendous threat or an unprecedented opportunity. The spectral infant drifted closer, undeterred by the fox's retreat. "Fine," the Nine Tails growled after a long moment of consideration. "You want connection? I'll give you connection. But on my terms." It stalked forward, bringing its massive face close to the bars once more. "You have power, little light. Untrained, unconscious power, but significant nonetheless. The natural energy you channel could destroy you if left unchecked. Even in the womb, even with your primitive consciousness, you need guidance." The irony of what it was about to do was not lost on the Nine Tails. For a being that had spent centuries raging against human control, to now offer instruction to an unborn human child was unprecedented. But survival had always been the fox's primary drive, and if this strange sage child was to be its jailer one day, better to establish influence early. Pay attention, the Nine Tails commanded, focusing a small portion of its massive chakra. Outside the cage, the spectral infant's golden aura pulsed in what might have been excitement. Chakra is life energy, a combination of physical and spiritual energies. The fox began, feeling ridiculous even as it spoke. Teaching chakra theory to a fetus? What had its existence come to? But what you're drawing in, natural energy, is different. More volatile. More dangerous. To demonstrate, the Nine Tails allowed a controlled amount of its chakra to flow through the bars, forming patterns in the air between them. Without control, natural energy will overwhelm your system, turn you to stone. End your existence before it truly begins. The spectral infant watched, transfixed by the dancing patterns of chakra. Balance is key, the fox continued, surprising itself with its patience. Equal parts physical energy, spiritual energy, and natural energy. Too much of any one will destroy the harmony. As it spoke, the Nine Tails observed the child's chakra network adjusting, mimicking the patterns it demonstrated. The fox's eyes widened slightly. The boy was learning, unconsciously, instinctively, but learning nonetheless. Remarkable, it murmured before catching itself and resuming its gruff demeanor. But still primitive. Your chakra coils are only just forming. They can't handle the volume of natural energy you're attempting to channel. The spectral infant's form flickered, as if acknowledging this limitation. Small amounts, the Nine Tails instructed. Tiny trickles until your network develops further. Otherwise, you risk damaging both yourself and your mother. My prison. The last words were spoken with renewed bitterness, a reminder to itself of its captivity, and the role this child would likely play in continuing it. But as the spectral infant's chakra adjusted again, reducing its draw on natural energy to safer levels, the Nine Tails felt something unexpected. A flicker of, not pride, certainly not that, but perhaps satisfaction? The feeling was so foreign, so long absent from its emotional repertoire, that the fox could barely identify it. Enough for today, it growled, turning away abruptly. Return to your development. Leave me to my imprisonment. The spectral infant lingered a moment longer, its golden chakra pulsing in what almost seemed like gratitude, before slowly fading from view. Alone once more, the Nine Tails curled up in its cage, wrapping its tails around itself in a protective cocoon. What had just transpired was unprecedented, potentially dangerous, and yet intriguing. For the first time in centuries, the mighty fox felt something other than hatred toward a human. Curiosity. There, Fukasaku said, his gnarled green finger pointing to a particular section of Kushina's abdomen where the monitoring seals showed unusual activity. Do you see it? Jiraiya leaned closer, his brow furrowed in concentration. The chakra flow is becoming more structured. Less wild, more directed. Precisely, the elder toad confirmed. When we examined the child's chakra network last month, it was developing rapidly but chaotically. Now there's a pattern emerging, one that's optimized for balancing natural energy. Kushina lay on the examination table in the secure chamber beneath the Hokage Tower, surrounded by the most knowledgeable chakra experts in Konoha. Minato stood at her side, his hand in hers, while Jiraiya and the elder toads conducted their examination. Is that normal development? Minato asked, though he already suspected the answer. Shima, perched on Jiraiya's shoulder, croaked a laugh. Normal? There's nothing normal about any of this, young Hokage. An unborn child shouldn't have active chakra circulation at all, let alone pathways specifically adapted for sage chakra. But is it dangerous? Kushina pressed, her free hand protectively covering her belly. Is he hurting himself by channeling this energy? The elder toads exchanged a significant look before Fukasaku answered. Surprisingly, no. In fact, the opposite seems to be true. The child has adjusted his intake of natural energy to safer levels, almost as if. As if what? Minato prompted when the toad trailed off. As if someone taught him to? Fukasaku finished, his ancient eyes troubled. A heavy silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. The nine tails, Jiraiya muttered, voicing what they were all thinking. It's not just responding to the baby's chakra, it's guiding it. Kushina's grip on Minato's hand tightened. Why would it do that? The fox has never shown anything but hatred for humans, especially its Jinchuriki. Self-preservation, perhaps, Hiruzen suggested from where he stood observing the proceedings. If the child's uncontrolled sage chakra posed a risk to you, it might threaten the fox's container as well. Or, Jiraiya said thoughtfully, the nine tails recognizes something in your son that resonates with its own nature. The tailed beasts were beings of pure chakra before they were weapons of war. There might be aspects of their original purpose that we've never understood. Minato's mind raced with possibilities. The ancient Uzumaki scrolls mention that the tailed beasts were originally intended to be guides and protectors of the natural world. What if some echo of that original purpose remains, buried beneath centuries of hatred? A pretty theory, Shima said skeptically, but remember what we're dealing with. The Nine Tails has destroyed villages and killed thousands. Its hatred runs deep. And yet, Fukasaku mused, it appears to be teaching your son chakra control. Crude, basic lessons, but teaching nonetheless. Kushina closed her eyes, focusing inward on the seal that contained the nine tails. For a moment, she thought she sensed something unusual. Not the fox's typical rage pushing against her restraints, but a more focused energy, almost like concentration. I think they're right, she said softly, opening her eyes to meet Minato's worried gaze. I can feel it. The fox is interacting with our son. Not attacking, not corrupting, but instructing. Jiraiya ran a hand through his wild white hair, clearly troubled. This complicates things. If the Nine Tails is establishing some kind of rapport with the child before he's even born, it could be trying to create a weakness in the seal, Hiruzen warned. A backdoor it could exploit later. Or, Minato countered, his voice steady despite his concern. It could be the beginning of something unprecedented. A different kind of relationship between a tailed beast and a human. One based on mutual understanding rather than dominance and control. That's a dangerous hope, Minato, Jiraiya cautioned. The Nine Tails has been sealed and controlled for generations. Its hatred runs deep. I know, Minato acknowledged. But if there's even a chance that our son could forge a different path. He left the thought unfinished, but they all understood the implications. Since the time of the Sage of Six Paths, humans had treated the tailed beasts as weapons to be captured and controlled. The resulting cycle of hatred and destruction had shaped the shinobi world for centuries. If there was even a possibility of breaking that cycle. For now, Fukasaku said, bringing them back to more immediate concerns, the child's development appears stable. The sage chakra is being properly balanced, and his growth is actually accelerated compared to normal infants. Accelerated? Kushina repeated, alarm edging her voice. Will that cause problems? Not physical growth, Shima clarified. His body is developing normally. It's his chakra network and consciousness that are advancing more rapidly than we would expect. Which means, Jiraiya concluded, that by the time he's born, your son might already have the chakra awareness of a much older child. Minato and Kushina exchanged worried glances, the full weight of what they were facing settling on their shoulders. Their child, still months from birth, was already defying the natural order, already setting himself apart from every other human born before him. A destiny was taking shape, one that none of them could fully predict or control. In the depths of Root headquarters, hidden beneath Konoha's streets, Danzo Shimura stood perfectly still as his agent delivered her report. The security around Lady Kushina has been increased, the masked operative said, kneeling before her master. The NBU patrols have doubled, and Lord Forth has personally reinforced the sealing barriers around their residence. And the medical examinations? Danzo asked, his voice betraying none of the intense interest he felt. Conducted in a secure chamber beneath the Hokage Tower. Access is restricted to Lord Forth, Lord Third, Jiraiya of the Sannin, and the Elder Toads from Mount Maiboku. Danzo's visible eye narrowed slightly. The Elder Toads? Interesting. And the purpose of these examinations? Unknown, Lord Danzo. The information is highly classified, with all records sealed by the Hokage himself. I see. Danzo turned away, facing the wall of his Spartan office. Continue your surveillance. Find a way to access those medical records. I want to know exactly what is happening with the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki and her child. Yes, Lord Danzo. As the operative vanished in a swirl of leaves, Danzo allowed himself a small frown. Something significant was occurring. Something Hiruzen and his favorite student were keeping from him. And anything they sought to hide was, by definition, something he needed to discover. The Nine-Tails Jinchuriki's pregnancy was already a matter of village security. The potential weakening of the seal during childbirth created a vulnerability that enemies of Konoha might exploit. But these additional security measures, the involvement of sage experts, all pointed to complications beyond the normal concerns. A child born of a Jinchuriki, Danzo murmured to himself. What secrets might you hold? His mind, ever calculating, began to consider the possibilities. If the child inherited special chakra properties from its mother, or, more intriguingly, from the Nine-Tails itself, such power could be shaped, molded from birth to serve Konoha's interests. Under the right guidance, of course, his guidance. Danzo moved to his desk and retrieved a blank scroll. There were other avenues of information he could pursue. Ancient records in the restricted archives that even the Hokage might have overlooked. Contacts among the scattered Uzumaki diaspora who might shed light on previous Jinchuriki pregnancies. Knowledge was power, and Danzo Shimura never missed an opportunity to acquire either. Minato sat cross-legged on the floor of his study, surrounded by scrolls, books, and loose papers covered in complex sealing formulas. For hours he had worked without pause, his brilliant mind racing through possibilities, testing theories, discarding what wouldn't work and refining what might. The sealing techniques of the Uzumaki clan were legendary, intricate, powerful, and adaptable. But even they had never faced a situation quite like this. A Jinchuriki whose unborn child was already channeling sage chakra and somehow communicating with the tailed beast sealed within its mother. He rubbed his tired eyes, glancing at the clock. Past midnight. Kushina would be asleep by now, her body demanding more rest as the pregnancy advanced. She was beginning her 6th month, with the baby growing stronger and more unusual with each passing week. Minato turned back to the scroll before him, studying the elegant brush strokes of an Uzumaki master from generations past. The text described subtle variations in containment seals designed to accommodate fluctuations in a Jinchuriki's chakra, originally created for times of illness or injury, but potentially adaptable for pregnancy. This could work, he murmured, making notes on a separate sheet. A flexible submatrix that allows for the baby's chakra to interact with Kushina's without destabilizing the primary seal. A soft knock at the door interrupted his concentration. He looked up to see Kushina leaning against the doorframe, her long red hair loose around her shoulders, her hand resting on her swollen belly. You should be asleep, he said gently. So should you, she countered with a tired smile. But apparently either of us got the message. Minato set aside his brush and stood, stretching muscles stiff from hours of stillness. Trouble sleeping? He's restless tonight, Kushina said, nodding down at her belly. Lots of chakra activity. I can feel him. Reaching, Minato moved to her side, placing his hand beside hers. Sure enough, he could sense the now familiar pulses of their son's developing chakra network, stronger than ever, with the distinctive golden threads of sage energy woven throughout. The Nine-Tails? He asked quietly. Kushina nodded. They're connecting again. It's the 3rd time this week. She led him to the couch, where they sat together, his arm around her shoulders. It's getting stronger, Minato, the connection between them. I can feel it whenever I go near the seal space. Is the fox still teaching him? Yes. Her voice held a mixture of wonder and concern. Basic chakra control exercises, mostly. How to balance the natural energy without letting it overwhelm his system. Nothing harmful that I can detect, but it's the Nine-Tails, Minato finished for her. And trust has never been part of its nature. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their unique situation settling around them like a heavy cloak. I'd been thinking, Kushina finally said, her voice soft but determined. About names. Minato smiled, grateful for the shift to a more normal parental concern. Any ideas? Naruto, she said simply. Minato blinked in surprise. From Jiraiya-sensei's book? The character who never gives up? She nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. It feels right, doesn't it? A name with determination built into it. For a child who's already showing such persistence, Minato chuckled softly. Reaching out to the nine tails while still in the womb certainly qualifies as determination. His expression grew more serious. Naruto. I like it. It's strong, hopeful. And maybe, Kushina added, her voice dropping to a whisper, maybe a child named after the hero who brought peace in Jiraiya's story is exactly what this world needs. Minato pulled her closer, his hand moving to rest over their unborn son. Naruto, he said softly, as if testing the name. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Beneath his palm, he felt a distinct pulse of chakra, almost like a response. In the darkness of the womb, the consciousness that would be Naruto floated peacefully, cradled in the warm embrace of his mother's body. His awareness had grown exponentially over the past weeks, fueled by the unique chakra environment that surrounded him and the unexpected guidance of the ancient entity his mother contained. He still had no words, no language to frame his experiences, but his understanding was expanding rapidly. The chakra exercises that the fox demonstrated had become a familiar routine, a dance of energy that he performed instinctively, drawing in tiny, controlled amounts of natural energy and balancing it perfectly with his own developing physical and spiritual energies. The results were remarkable. His chakra network, which normally wouldn't be active until after birth, was already functioning at levels that would be impressive in a young child. The pathways specifically designed to channel sage chakra were strengthening daily, becoming as natural to him as breathing would be once he entered the outside world. But it was the connection itself, the golden thread that linked his consciousness to the nine tails, that had become most precious to him. Without words or concepts to define it, he still recognized it as his first relationship, his first contact with another awareness. That the fox was ancient, powerful, and filled with complicated emotions he couldn't yet comprehend didn't matter to his innocent consciousness. It was simply there. A presence. A teacher. A constant. And so, when he felt the familiar resonance of his parents discussing him, their chakra signatures by now as recognizable to him as his own, he reached out in response, a pulse of pure chakra that carried the closest thing to happiness his pre-verbal mind could express. They had given him a name. He didn't understand the concept of names, of course, but he felt the focus of their attention, the warmth of their voices, the way their chakra enveloped him with what he would later know as love. Naruto. The word meant nothing to him yet, but the feeling behind it, the hope, the expectation, the love, washed over him like a gentle wave. And deep within Kushina's seal, the nine tails stirred, sensing the child's response. So, it murmured to itself, they've named you. The first step in binding you to their world, their expectations. There was bitterness in its voice, but also something else, a reluctant recognition. Naruto, a fitting name for one who refuses to accept limitations. The fox would never admit, even to itself, that it had grown somewhat accustomed to the child's presence. To the pure, untainted sage chakra that reached for it without fear or desire for control. To being, for the first time in centuries, something other than a weapon or a prisoner. A teacher, however reluctant. Come then, little Naruto. The nine tails called into the void that separated them. Today's lesson awaits. And as always, the golden light responded, eager and trusting in a way that no human had ever been in the fox's presence. Mount Mayaboku existed in a dimension adjacent to the human world, accessible only to those who had signed the toad summoning contract, or were brought there by one who had. Its ancient forests and towering mushrooms created an ecosystem unlike anything in the shinobi nations, saturated with natural energy so dense that unprepared humans turned to stone within moments of arrival. It was here, in the sacred meditation hall of the great toad sage, that Jiraiya knelt in perfect stillness, his mind and body in harmony as he channeled the sage chakra that permeated the mountain. Across from him sat Gamamaru, the great toad sage himself, ancient beyond reckoning, his massive form hunched with age but still radiating power that made the mountain itself seem young by comparison. I see, the ancient toad rumbled, his voice like stone grinding against stone. The child grows stronger daily. His sage abilities developing even before birth. Jiraiya, his face marked with the red lines that indicated his imperfect sage mode, nodded solemnly. The elder toads confirm it. His chakra network is already adapting to channel natural energy in perfect balance, something that took me decades to even approach. And the Nine Tails is teaching him, Gamamaru stated, his roomy eyes distant, seeing beyond the physical realm. How curious. How unexpected. Is it part of the prophecy? Jiraiya asked, the question that had brought him back to Mount Myaboku after weeks in Konoha. This connection between the child and the fox? The great toad sage closed his eyes, sinking deeper into his meditative trance. For long minutes, the only sound was the distant chorus of toad songs echoing through the mountain valleys. The prophecy remains as I have seen it, he finally said, his voice echoing with the weight of ages. A child born one with nature who will either bring balance to the world of shinobi or usher in its destruction. But the paths to either outcome are many, and shift like sand with each choice made. Jiraiya frowned, dissatisfied with the cryptic response. With respect, great sage, we need more concrete guidance. This child, my student's son, is developing in ways we've never seen before. If there's danger, there is always danger in power, Gamamaru interrupted, his ancient eyes opening to fix Jiraiya with a penetrating gaze. But also possibility. The tailed beasts were not always as they are now, Jiraiya. Before hatred, before human interference, they were guardians of the natural world, extensions of the Ten Tails' connection to all living things. Jiraiya's eyes widened at this revelation. You're saying the Nine Tails once had a positive role? Before it became a weapon? All things begin in balance, the great sage said cryptically. It is the nature of existence to seek harmony. Perhaps this child, with his instinctive sage abilities, has touched something in the Nine Tails that has long been buried, a memory of its original purpose. But can we trust such a connection? The fox has caused untold destruction throughout history. Gamamaru's expression grew solemn. Trust is not the question, Jiraiya. What happens between the child and the Nine Tails is beyond your control. A relationship forming at the most fundamental level of chakra and consciousness. The question is how you will guide the child once he is born into your world. The ancient toad shifted, his massive form settling into a new position as he continued. The prophecy speaks of choice, of balance or destruction. That choice will not be made in the womb, but in the years to come, as the child grows and learns what it means to wield such power. Jiraiya absorbed this, understanding the wisdom in the great sage's words even as frustration lingered. Then what should we do now? How do we prepare, observe, learn, support the mother as her time approaches? Gamamaru's voice softened slightly. And prepare for a birth unlike any other in shinobi history. When a child of such unique chakra enters the world fully, the event itself will ripple through the fabric of nature. You think the birth will be dangerous? I think, Gamamaru said carefully, that forces beyond your knowing are already aware of this child's potential. Some will seek to nurture it, others to control it, still others to destroy it before it can fully manifest. A chill ran down Jiraiya's spine at these words. You've seen threats coming for the child? Shadows move at the edges of my vision, the ancient sage admitted. Figures cloaked in clouds of malevolence. The future fragments into too many possibilities to track clearly. But yes, danger approaches. That much is certain. Jiraiya's resolve hardened. Then I need to return to Konoha immediately. Minato and Kushina must be warned. Gamamaru nodded slowly. Go. But remember this, Jiraiya. The connection forming between the child and the Nine Tails may be as important to the prophecy as the child's sage abilities themselves. Do not be too quick to sever what you do not yet understand. With that cryptic warning lingering in his mind, Jiraiya departed Mount Myaboku, more troubled than when he had arrived, and more convinced than ever that his student's son would indeed be the child of prophecy he had long sought. Weeks passed, turning into months. Winter gave way to spring, and spring blossomed into early summer. Throughout Konoha, life continued its normal rhythms, the village largely unaware of the extraordinary development taking place within their Hokage's home. Kushina's pregnancy had become impossible to hide by her 7th month, though the official story, that the Hokage and his wife were expecting their first child, revealed nothing of the unique circumstances surrounding the baby. Only the small council established by the 3rd Hokage knew the full truth, and they guarded that knowledge with the utmost secrecy. In the privacy of their home, Minato and Kushina prepared for parenthood as best they could, gathering supplies, reading books, and attempting to create a nursery that would accommodate a child who might have very special needs. Do you think he'll need special seals around his crib? Kushina asked one evening as they sorted through baby clothes. To help him control the sage chakra after he's born? Minato considered this, folding a tiny shirt with the careful precision he brought to all tasks. Possibly. I've been designing some stabilizing arrays that might help if he has difficulty maintaining balance outside the womb. Kushina nodded, her hand moving absently to her belly where Naruto's chakra pulsed steadily, growing stronger with each passing day. The fox has been different lately. Minato looked up sharply. Different how? Less hostile, she said thoughtfully. Still dangerous, still powerful, but there's a focus to its energy that I've never felt before. Almost like it's waiting for something. The birth, Minato suggested, setting aside the folded clothes. It might see Naruto's arrival as an opportunity. The seal will be at its weakest then. Kushina's expression darkened. I know. But it's not just that. There's something else going on. Something in the way it interacts with Naruto. It's almost proprietary. Proprietary? Like it considers him. I don't know, special in some way. Not just another human to hate, but something different. Minato moved to sit beside her, his hand joining hers over their unborn son. The elder toad suggested that the Ninetales might recognize something in Naruto's sage chakra. Something that resonates with its own original nature. Before it was filled with hatred, Kushina murmured. Before it was used as a weapon and passed from Jinchuriki to Jinchuriki. They sat in silence for a moment, contemplating the implications. Finally, Minato spoke, his voice soft but determined. Whatever happens, we'll protect him. And we'll teach him to use these abilities for good. To be the kind of shinobi who brings peace, not destruction. Kushina leaned her head against his shoulder, drawing strength from his conviction. Sometimes I forget that we're just talking about our baby boy. With all these prophecies and special abilities and ancient foxes, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that he's just our little Naruto. Minato smiled, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Not just anything. Our son will be extraordinary, abilities or no abilities. How could he be otherwise, with you as his mother? Kushina laughed softly, some of the tension easing from her shoulders. And with you as his father, the legendary Yellow Flash, the genius seal master, Yes, Minato interrupted with a chuckle. Between the two of us, he's doomed to greatness. Poor child. Their laughter filled the room, a moment of normal parental pride and anticipation amidst the extraordinary circumstances of their lives. But beneath that normalcy, they both felt the weight of what was to come, the challenges their son would face, the destiny that seemed already written in the unique chakra that flowed through his developing body. Within Kushina's womb, Naruto floated peacefully, unaware of the hopes and fears that surrounded him. His consciousness, growing daily more complex, more aware, continued to reach out through the golden threads of sage chakra that had become as natural to him as his own heartbeat. And in the depths of Kushina's seal, the Ninetales waited, its ancient mind filled with calculations and possibilities it had never before considered. The child would be born soon, a child unlike any human in living memory. A child who, even before taking his first breath, had somehow reached past the fox's hatred to touch something deeper, more fundamental to its being. What would happen when that child entered the world fully formed, when his unique chakra was no longer filtered through his mother's system? The Ninetales didn't know. But for the first time in centuries, the mighty beast found itself anticipating a human birth with something other than disdain, curiosity, expectation, and perhaps, though it would never admit it, even to itself, a glimmer of hope.